This is Jaden. I'm just going to call him Jaden because I like people's handles better than their real names. They picked their handles. You didn't pick your real name. I met this guy in China. I like to organize conferences. I organize this one, and I organize conferences in China also. And the one I organized over there was called WhoJS, and it was Shanghai. And this guy just showed up there from San Francisco, which I thought was odd because most people showed up there from like Beijing or somewhere near Shanghai and not across the ocean. So I was very impressed, and that was when I met Jaden. And ever since then, he's done nothing but continue to impress me in a lot of ways. So I'll let him talk about his thing, programming with a purpose, and maybe that will impress you too.
Thank you, Troy. So I want to kick things up a little bit to the higher level. We've had some really great stuff on some nuts and bolts and message passing patterns and functional reactive programming and all kinds of amazing things that I love to geek about on a daily basis. But I'm up here in Portland, a city that I love, a city that is home of Powell's. So I want to kick things up and talk about books. I want to talk about programming with a purpose and tell you a story about systems and books and people and you and me. And yes, I'm going to get a little autobiographical. Act 1, I started programming when I was 10. I think there's someone here who's trying to beat me, but I've been doing this for a long time. I remember it very well. I had a great example in my older brother, who was a web developer, but I was hanging out in a Borders Books in Marin County, California, and I was browsing a clearance technical section. And for some reason, this book caught my attention. Java, as in applets, not JavaScript. I did not learn Java from this book, but I did put the CD-ROM in my computer, start messing around with things. Somehow I found the HTML file that was embedding the applets, and I started editing things, and I deleted some things, and it broke everything. But you know what? That was amazing. It was incredibly empowering. I changed some text files, some strange symbols that I probably couldn't even read very well at the time. And it had an effect. It had a remote effect. This was Newtonian action at a distance, and I was causing it. It was incredible. I was 10 years old, and I was already drunk with the power of programming computers. So from there, it all went downhill. I found GeoCities. I found the best features of HTML. I found animated GIFs. I didn't start out in QBasic like a lot of people did. Gorillas.baz was a great thing. But that wasn't something that was interactive for me. That was something that I just played. With HTML and with web technologies, this was something that I could directly manipulate things around. And, I had pretty low standards at the time, but I had some mean under construction GIFs. And so I had a great time. I got to spend my childhood, the most productive years of my life, learning internet things. I never got into Java. I did get sidetracked learning about databases, and I learned that in order to make databases, you had to use a program called Microsoft Access, and then you could plug them into something called ODBC to talk to them with something called Visual Basic, and it was incredible. I had no idea what I was doing, but I just went all in. And then I gave it all up when I was 16 because of another book. Like the main character, I thought that the entire world was crummy and nobody was authentic anymore and computers were terrible. They were just systems of power and oppression and control. And I was absolutely right, but power was an idea that I was very uncomfortable with as a 16-year-old. And so I just completely stepped away from technology. I stopped programming. I kept playing Halo. And I enrolled in college as a linguistics major, I suppose, and eventually got my degree in political science. After graduating and passing by, I guess, a lot of great technical developments, Node was invented during my great kind of dark ages. I thought, I really want to work on things that matter. I wanted to go into public policy. I cared about systems. I wanted to work on things that had a great deal of leverage. In my experience in the past, technology was something that was fun, but whatever. So I wanted to go into policy. I was planning on enrolling in grad school, law school, something like that. And I had a period of time after graduating when Starbucks wouldn't return my calls. So reluctantly, I went on Craigslist. I looked at the job posting section. I found a job opening at a local nonprofit. So if it was going to be evil, it might as well be nonprofit. Writing some software for them. This is a company in Boise, Idaho, that was working on healthcare software. And it was the first time that through my technology skills, I realized that I was working on something that could make a difference, that could have as much of an impact on society, on the things that people do, on issues that directly affect people's lives, as I could through any of the other career paths that I was looking at in terms of public policy, in terms of policy analysis, bureaucratic systems, things like that. This could make a difference. The healthcare industry in America, oh my goodness. Healthcare is something that's really interesting. It's a reminder of our own mortality, and we hate that. So in typical American fashion, we wrap it up in layers of complexity, layers upon layers of different complex systems and different payers and health insurance plans and different arrangements for clinics and hospital systems. And what really gets lost in all of this is the purpose of the care in the first place, is patients. This is actually a real diagram that I found of the American healthcare system. There's a lot of graph invariant violations. I don't think this would pass that FRP validator. And the 16-year-old angsty side of me kept coming back to this system as I learned more about healthcare as a domain and being angry about the lack of a patient voice and the lack of a human-centered role in this large system thing that we had. And we have a rich intellectual history of words around this sense of powerlessness and anomie and angst and punks and rioters and maladroits and everything. And I started to realize that there were connections here. Throughout all of this, throughout people caught up in these systems that were much larger than them, that had a sense of an impersonal nature, there were people who found ways to assert their own position within this system, to assert their own power within this system. The patients, the punks, the programmers. And then came another book. This is Code, the second version, I guess, or the first version, by Lawrence Lessig, which drew the analogy very explicitly for me between legal systems and frameworks and software. Software is law, is policy. Software just has a little bit better enforcement. This photograph says James Madison, System Architect, 1787. I love it. I don't read binary. It's probably some weird encoding. It's probably ASCII. And then I was finally able to track down the source of this quote, which I've been hearing paraphrased quite a bit. I've usually heard it comparing programmers to wizards. The original quote that I was able to find says, "There is great magic in this. In a way, we are magicians. We are alchemists, sorcerers, and wizards. We are a very strange bunch, but there is great fun in being a wizard, and great power, too." By Billy Joel in his 1993 commencement address at the Berklee College of Music. So he was talking about musicians and the role that musicians play in popular culture. I think that it's very apt still to the domain of programming. Most people view the work that we do as complete, utter, disconnected gobbledygook and esoteric incantations. And it really is. But it's really powerful. And so I love the fact that people are helping to bring that to a wider audience. But some of the things like Code Academy, I don't know if that's necessarily the best approach of taking the existing technologies that we have that weren't necessarily designed to be approachable or empowering. They're just kind of historical accidents. The thing that we saw earlier in terms of using graph structures for control flow to make things more approachable to people, I think that's great. And there's a lot of other kinds of experiments that I've seen like that to make programming more accessible to people and to give that empowering feeling. Because I think ultimately it's really important to realize that what we do and that we have the power to do and that we have, for whatever reason, invested enough time in our skill sets learning these technologies is at the end of the day we make superpowers. We build systems which give humans more leverage than they've ever had before. With great power, responsibility, some quotes, some things like that, we make superpowers. We could do that for large corporations. We could do that for large corporations and actually do really cool things which help people at large corporations. We could also do them in our garages in Oakland, right? You could do whatever you want. Just realize that the product that you're making really matters. So what does that mean? I want to talk about Node and why I think Node is super influential in terms of my own background, not only for the time in my life and in my own personal relationship with technology when I started using Node, but for the broader programming community and what that means. Node is an amateur community. That doesn't mean that there aren't talented people and fantastic ideas in Node, but Node is an amateur community in that it's very approachable. The analogy was made, I think, at Node Dublin, that JavaScript is punk rock. Anyone could just download Node, start hacking away, follow a couple of tutorials. Beyond that, though, I think there's a couple of really amazing things that the Node ecosystem has promoted and popularized in terms of ideas, in terms of the way of thinking about development. I apologize for the small text, but Node has really from day one embraced radical modularity. Almost as important as Node, in my opinion, is NPM. And people like Substack who have popularized the idea of ubiquitous tiny modules, right? If you look at anything, if it takes you more than 10 minutes to explain, 5 minutes, 10 lines, 100 lines to explain what a module does to someone, it's too big. Break it out. Tiny pieces that do one thing really well. That's not a new idea. That's not Node's idea. But Node has done a lot, I feel, to popularize it in terms of the types of languages and technologies people are using today to build web application frameworks. NPM is fantastic, and in my opinion, it should be the model of any programming ecosystem that wants to establish itself going forward. In addition to radical modularity, I would say is not just the number of modules, but really good versioning control. What NPM really gets right is local versioning, local dependencies. That goes along with the idea of semantic versioning that, thanks to GitHub, we now have. And that's fantastic. A lot of attention has been paid to the rate of growth in the NPM registry in terms of the sheer number of modules. We just recently, a couple of days ago, passed 30,000 modules in the NPM registry, up from right around 20,000 at the beginning of this year, which is an amazing rate of growth. Almost more exciting to me is the number of edges in that dependency graph, in the public NPM registry dependency graph, the number of interdependencies between modules. We're right around 47,000. I had hoped to have some cool graphs, but I had some counting errors. So I'm undercounting a little bit, but it's right around 40,000 dependencies, not counting dev dependencies, in the public NPM registry. And hopefully if I get some time tonight, I could show some cool visualization stuff tomorrow or put it on Twitter or something. What does that mean? Having those interdependencies in the public dependency graph means that people are actually taking advantage of code reuse. People are actually using each other's modules, contributing tiny things. It means that you could publish early, you could revise more often, you can fix security bugs more easily. Both security and functional and performance bugs. And you could publish everything much more quickly, which flows into velocity and transparency. Node is the first popular platform that has grown up completely in the age of GitHub. Everything is on GitHub by default. It's awesome. I love it. Anything else sucks. Node has also taught me to branch out in terms of domain. The fact that at this conference here, the agenda is so much centered around hardware, that people are using Node to talk to robots, that people are using Node as a ubiquitous glue between all kinds of different web APIs, between hardware devices, between streams coming from all sorts of sensors and mobile things. It's fantastic, and I haven't seen that level of experimentation and just openness to new ideas in other programming communities. So maybe it's a case of Node exceptionalism. We are at a Node conference, but I think that's fantastic, and it's definitely a criteria that I would hold any future programming community that I would choose to be a part of to challenge them to embrace that level of experimentation. The more mainstream your knowledge, comes a quote from another great book, the greater risk you have of being left in the technology stone age, from Chad Fowler and the Passionate Programmer. Fantastic book. It's technology agnostic, and it really looks at kind of career planning over the long term for what you want to do to be a programmer. What is it that you want? Do you want to make a lot of money? You could do that. If I wanted to make a lot of money, I would have gone into investment banking. They get really nice bonuses. I'm a programmer because I have come to terms with my relationship with power. I think that power is a good thing. Power has the potential to be concentrated in ways which work against my own interests, against what a lot of people would consider to be society's interests. So that's something that I look for in systems architectures. Are these things that I would be comfortable being on the other side of, being a user of, or being a customer of a company that was having to use software that is set up like this, that is limiting the power of the customer service agents so that really no one has any visibility into what's going on in the organization? Or do I want systems that are designed inherently at the architectural level to be much more open and distributed and collaborative? These are the types of decisions that we get to make every day as implementers, as frontline programmers, as systems designers that affect people, that affect ourselves, that affect our customers. My big takeaway is that the tech stack that you're using is likely wrong. Is Node the be-all, end-all? It is not. It's awesome for right now. I love working at it on a daily basis. Will I be using it a year from now? I don't know. The team that you're on is likely wrong. The country, the political, and the economic system that you're in are all likely wrong. By wrong, I mean not necessarily optimal, but it's what you have, and you could be always aware of opportunities for incremental improvements to whatever context that you find yourself in, and look for ways that you could embrace the hacker ethic and find things in your life that you could make better at negligible cost to you that other people can share in the benefit of. Earlier, there was not enough legroom at all. I felt like I was on Southwest Airlines. So a couple of us folded some chairs up, and it was a much better experience, just kind of in hacking my own little conference environment. It was fantastic. Sic transit gloria, Latin for glory fades. Everything is transient. Consider your immediate effect, and how can you structure your daily habits and your practice to be more constructive and supportive in the long term. Dominic Tarr once said on IRC that it's like that in sailing too. The boat will outlast you, so you have to plan to control your fatigue. The Salinger quote, "I'm not afraid to compete. It's just the opposite. Don't you see that? I'm afraid that I will compete. That's what scares me, just because I'm so horribly conditioned to accept everybody else's values, and just because I like applause and people to rave about me doesn't make it right. It's very easy to play along. My context, I am embedded in startup hell in Palo Alto, California. There's a lot of very short-term thinking, I think, in that area in terms of the types of things that people are working on and pursuing. It's very easy to fall into that. There's tons of social support of working on startups, I guess, as a lifestyle or for money or for VC money and anything like that. It's very easy to get support doing that. It doesn't make it right. Think critically about whatever it is that you're doing. And if there's something that you don't agree with, don't do it. I used to think that having a lot of opinions made people a good programmer. Horse.js might disagree. I value principles. When I look for people, potential coworkers, it's not what they think about a particular technology. Technology is transient. Technology is an artifact. What are the principles guiding your usage of technology and the technologies that you prefer. And the final book is Protocol by Alexander Galloway, which is a fascinating book that I was turned on to by Steve Klobnik from the Ruby community, which talks about technological protocols from a socially aware context. It looks at things like the development of HTTP, the development of other web standards that we all use on a daily basis, from a systems basis, from an architectural point of view. What are the social requirements that they were designed to fulfill? Unfortunately, I don't have enough time to talk about it, but I definitely encourage you to read it, and I do have a copy for whoever wants it. We make systems, and our systems affect the real world. We are the scarcity as programmers. You could have a lot of people out there handing you requirements docs. At the end of the day, we are implementing it. We have the ability to choose what we implement. We have as much power in that position as we can recognize and as we could take the initiative, I suppose, to point at the right direction and build the kind of world that we want to live in. Here's the obligatory code sample from my talk. Everyone needs a good local copy of Hoarders. May it rest in peace. And thank you so much for your consideration.